Welcome to another episode of the Move to Spain podcast. My name is John Towell from justlostlisters.com. As always, I'm an English lawyer. And one of the things that we do at justlostlisters.com is we advise people on property purchases. Now, we're the first to say that we know nothing about architecture and surveys and design. So we have Mr. Liam Keller, architect. Hello, Liam.
Okay. Hi. Oh yeah. Yes. What would you like to me to say? I suppose I could possibly. I'll explain myself. I'm registered with the Royal Institute of British Architects. And I'm qualified to work over here in Spain. I've 40 years experience, and I can provide a wide range of services. Which job by job are sort of tailored to the client's needs. So, if I just go through what I do, I'm passive house design, obviously surveys, as you'd mentioned, refurbishment, concept design, new build, detailed design, quantity surveying, contract management, permissions and building licenses, depending on whether you're refurbishing a building or designing a new building, project management, and through another organisation for people who are out in the country, reed bed wastewater treatment through a company called Eco Lagunas. As a member of both the Royal Institute of British Architects and also the Colegio de Arquitectura de España, I fully comply with all their codes and conduct and professional integrity. And I'm also a member of Passive House Institute with Plataforma Edificación Passive House here in Spain and Passive House Costa del Sol. Qualifications, BA Honours Architecture, ROBA Part 2, my architect qualification. I was elected to the ROBA in 1992, so some time ago.
Yeah.
The architect qualifications are recognised by the Ministerio de Edificación y Ciencia from the 11th of June 2007, and I'm a member of the Colegio Oficial de Arquitectura de Córdoba since the 11th of July 2007. And as I said, I'm also a passive house designer. Experience, well, I've 40 years experience working as an architect on offices, healthcare, hotels, railway stations, community buildings, residential, including 2 homeless drop-in centres, one with drug rehabilitation, but it's not necessary to be a drug addict to work with me. Of course, over here in Spain, I've just mostly concentrated on residential, private residential housing, but also some rural tourism.
Right.
Okay.
I think a lot of the people listening to the podcast and looking at us on YouTube, they'll be thinking about, well, I'm buying a house in Spain, and the question, most people don't buy with a mortgage, some people do buy with a mortgage, but I think the question that people have is, well, I think we know the answer to it. Do I need a survey at a basic level?
Well, of course, it's always up to that. But I think it makes sense to know what you're buying. And if you yourself are not an expert in construction, especially not in Spanish construction, I think you need to know what problems you're buying into.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about this. A survey is always going to cost less than the repairs.
That's a good point. That's a good point, because that was my next question. When I bought property in the UK, and it's me being me, it's always been an old property, and it's always been what I think is a bargain. And I've always used the survey to negotiate the price, and I've always got my survey money back on the price deduction. Now, obviously, that can change for different people, but it's a good tool, isn't it, to negotiate?
Well, obviously, yes. We sort of look at a building and we say, look, rectifying the faults could cost in the region of of whatever. Or we'll start off on the survey and say, look, this is the problem. You've got a structural problem. You've got a defect on this. And then if somebody says, right, well, I'm going to go and discuss that with the vendor, and if necessary, we can give a bit more information what the possible costs are, or bring a builder in. But I mean, actually, on another point, recently I looked at a good purchase for somebody, and I was able, by looking at it, I found that the building, the land was subject to an order of suelo urbanizable no consolidado, which meant that it could be subject to future development,
Right.
which the vendor played dumb on, but clearly I don't see how they couldn't know about it.
Yeah.
It's what we might call in English parlance planning blind. So you don't know that something is going to happen there, but there might be. And in this situation, they had a very long garden, and the end of that garden could be subject to a sort of a new road and some housing. Now, because it was non-consolidado, this meant that if you bought the land, the cost of lighting, putting in a street, etc., and any other normal development costs, you would be subject to your share of those costs, depending on the area of the amount of the
Right.
development you owned. I think there was some years ago, people would have some land. The Ayuntamiento would then build a street. They'd lose part of their garden. The Ayuntamiento would build a street, pave it, and you then find out you had to pay for that section of street.
Right.
And the Ayuntamiento's excuse was, well, it's improved your property and the price, but you were still out of pocket. The only way you were going to recover that is if you sold your property, which possibly you didn't want to do.
Right. Now, we talked briefly. I mean, everybody knows what a survey on a property is, but my own personal experience and the experience of some clients is when they buy a rural property in particular, I got an architect to determine where the boundaries were, to make sure everyone was in agreement where the boundaries were.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I look at generally I will look and see, do a quick check of the boundaries. I mean, is there something really obvious that what is being sold or I'm being told is the property, and does that comply with the catastro documents? And if there is an error there, an obvious error, I will flag that out. When it is if we're dealing with a large property out in the countryside, where it's not that obvious, I would generally advise the client to get a GPS survey, and I know some topographic surveyors that will do that.
That was probably who I had. It probably was the office. Obviously, the office were helping me, just lost solicitors. But yeah, I think it was that, and there was some kind of imaging or something, and then we met all the neighbours, and everybody came and looked at the line with a bit of red paint, and everybody was happy, So yeah.
I mean, certainly, yeah. I mean, I would advise that with GPS for large areas. But I mean, there was an incident recently. I was looking at a townhouse, a small townhouse, for a client, and they were interested in it. And in studying what I could see there when I visited the house against the catastro, I very quickly realised that the house was actually built over the next door neighbour's property. So the next door neighbour's property went underneath their house.
Okay.
So I said, well, you're looking at the state of this house, you're going to be into structural repairs. That structural column is going down through your next door neighbour's property. And I cannot see how you would easily be able to make necessary repairs. I
Yeah.
mean, of course, you know, because the next door neighbour's not going to want you to go into their living room and start knocking a column about. And I mean, this brings up, of course, another point. I mean, if you are in such a situation, you want to have this sort of, you know, speak to your solicitor and say, you know, what will I be able to do? Are the agreements in place? Because I'm sure you're aware is that a lot of properties have been owned by families. When that has become part of the inheritance, it goes between 4 or 5 different people, and they each have a different part of the building.
Yeah.
They then sell it on as if it's totally separate. So it's not. We're not looking at what would be a proper flat with the requisite licenses and lease agreements to do repairs. So, you know, I think certainly for, you know, I always advise somebody to speak to your solicitor. You know, I mean, I know that people will say, oh, it's safe enough to buy a house in town or a property in town without a solicitor. But I would certainly, if you're buying an old property and buying something that's been converted into flats, look at what the structure is, what are the agreements on future repairs and decorations, because you could be buying into a lot of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that people buy a lot of, obviously, are new builds. And Belen, our property lawyer, spoke about the importance of protecting a deposit if the building company goes broke and that kind of thing. But from a survey point of view, what do you say about new builds?
Well, I mean, obviously, I mean, you hear some absolute horror stories about some new builds. I know, you know, I'm not going to say all new builds, obviously. So, you know, I think it is worthwhile looking at the project documents, seeing if they've been put together well, if they're quite detailed. Is there a possibility of a problem because, you know, it's been done you know, the project documents either don't exist or have been put together very sketchily. Also, as you said, look at the documentation and say, well, you know, if there is a problem, how can we recoup the funds? What is the protection in the purchasing? For example, what is the protection for patent and latent defects?
Yeah.
You know, should I go in and I mean, you know, you go in, you see that, for example, there's some cracks in the wall, and the guy says, yes, we'll put them right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, why are they there for a start? You know, this is
That would
new
be the
build.
first question.
Yeah, well, then for a start, I think I was reading recently about, you know, there had not been adequate foundations put in to the building. So see what the design of the foundations is, you know, and are they satisfactory for that location? If you're on a steeply locating site, or if there's a site that is subject to earth movement, do you have pile foundations, or if they just put in, you know, basic, you know, ring beams?
So you would get the documents from the architect who built the new build, and you would look at the documents to make sure that the foundations were good, the structure can support the building on a basic level, I suppose.
Well, I mean, would we go? I mean, the architect who designed it should be he's responsible for the actual structural design, and you know, it could be over costly to go in and do a recalculation of everything, because it is down to him to do that anyway. But if, you know, as in one, you know, I was looking at a building in Granada for a client. We looked at the drawings. Now this was going back about 15 years ago, and they were worked off the old national technical regulations, and the amount of structural information in it just, you know, gave me pause for thought. I said, look, there aren't the drawings here that I would expect to see,
Right, right. Because
so walk away.
yeah, because for example, I mean, I live in Bellomadna Costa, and it's not Marbella, but from my terrace, I can see two new builds, and I know that two-bedroom new builds, 800,000 euros. So, you're going to put 800,000 euros down. It might be worth speaking to someone like yourself and saying, is this building, I don't, in the technical term, is this building legit? I'm going to put
Yeah,
800,000. I might not need a mortgage, but I'm going to put 800,000 euros down. I still want to have it looked
yeah.
at.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, this is the other point. I mean, when you're not going for a mortgage, you don't have the building society or whoever, the lender, saying, hold on, we want to check that our investment's safe.
Mm.
Um, but no, I would say it's like, look, you need to see that there are a full set of technical documents there that have been submitted. I mean, in the bad old days, we know that buildings have been built, documents have not been supplied, and there has been a problem of movement
Mm.
on an area. So the first thing is, where are the building documents? Can I see these? And if people start getting funny, then I would start getting suspicious
Yeah, I
because
mean, at the end of
what,
the
what
at the end of the day, um, there's a lot of new builds in Spain. So presumably, the chances are if people are a bit funny, they don't supply you with the paperwork, you can advise the client. The client can just pay what they owe you. They can walk away and they can just find another one.
Yeah, I mean, look, if somebody's being funny about, if you go in and say, look, oh, all right, fine, love to buy your house, love to buy this new building, it's a new flat, can we see the structural drawings and the general drawings? And if somebody says, no, no, you can't, you go, well, why not? Because, that is what you're buying. I mean, there is so many, I mean, if you're, I mean, a five-story block of flats is not uncommon.
Mm.
You're not going to be able to see from your flat the foundations to that building, or
Yeah,
that everything is the
yeah, and even as you're just coming into Malaga from the west, not even in the center of Malaga, there's apartments there that are 1 million. So it's worth taking some advice before you pay the
yeah.
money, even if you don't need the mortgage,
No, no, I would certainly. I mean, again, how much? I mean, you're putting down 1 million. Your survey's not going to be that. You know, you know. Um, and as I said, as soon as you find one problem, start looking for the next one.
Yeah,
Because you're going into a perfectly new flat, a brand new flat. You're expecting it to be perfect, and you're
yeah.
not expecting to have any problems with, drawings, etc.
Yeah, things like you go into the underground parking. I mean, I don't know nothing about architecture, but you go in the underground parking and you look at the columns and you think, I wonder how they know that this is going to support the whole building. Things like
Yeah,
that. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Well, I mean, yes. I mean, it's again, it should be properly structurally designed, and they should have no problem with you going in and seeing these documents.
right.
And if you've got a surveyor, like, it's quite common for us to look over some drawings and say, yeah,
Yeah. I think the
is,
point we want to make here in the whole of this video is even if you don't need a mortgage, obviously you're taking advice from a lawyer about the legal side of it, but you do need to have a survey because it's a life-changing amount of money for most people. And you need to know what,
yeah,
like you said, you need to know what you're buying. You suspect it's an absolute wreck, then at least you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, as I said, uh, just look, get drawings, and as I said, common sense. See how people are reacting. If
Mm,
they're, oh yeah, fine, and then that there should be no problem. But as soon as they're a bit hesitant in giving you information, then you have to ask why.
yeah, absolutely. You did, just to change the subject, you did mention when people buy houses, sometimes they need work done, and I've done it myself. And you would act for people getting the work license. Sometimes you have to show the project that they need to do for the work license.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's several different licenses. They can vary depending from town hall to town hall. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're doing any type of rehabilitation, reform, as they call it here, you're going to need some form of building license. Generally, if it's what obras menor, which non-structural work, that can be handled by an aparejador, which is kind of like I suppose what we might understand as a building surveyor in England.
Yeah.
If you want any sort of structural work, and that would include, for example, if you're buying an old house, you realise that the staircase is not adequate. You know, it's either too steep or you don't have a good enough headroom. To put in a new staircase, you're opening up existing building, putting in new structure. That is a structural item. You need an architect.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have structural engineers in quite the same way we do in England.
Yeah.
Those structures will be done by the architect for, you know, for a house and for most buildings.
Yeah. So for people thinking about buying a property, it's right to say, look, speak to somebody like Liam, an architect, and then the place you're looking at, and I'm picturing in my mind an ancient farmhouse when I'm saying this. If you're looking at some ancient farmhouse and you say, oh, well, I'm going to renovate the stable, I'm going to like make some openings here, three of the beams have gone. You need to speak to Liam about the complete package. You know, you need to say, okay, I want the survey, I need to have a work license because the minute I buy it, I'm going to put this work license application in. It's
Yeah.
structural, and you know, you have to think about the whole thing. But what we haven't touched on is obviously you can design houses completely anew from the ground
Oh
up.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we, you know, well, I mean, that's what a lot of architects do. I mean, I'm used to a lot of refurbishment work, but I mean, we sort of, you know, I will deal with new build, and I mean, what I tend to do is, you know, as I said, I mean, you know, because I'm an architect, design is important to me. And I never try to approach a project, any project work for a new build, with a predefined view. You know, it's going to look like this. They're not all the same. I
Every
mean,
house is different.
yeah. Every house is different. I mean, I was trying to find out what the client wants.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important. I mean, it's, you know, it's not so much design; it's more kind of architectural therapy. You know, I want the client to get you know, the house of their dreams. I want it to be environmentally friendly, energy efficient, and comfortable. You know, and you know, as I said earlier, I'm a passive house designer, so we can use the passive house program, so we can assess the feasibility of the project environmentally,
Just
aesthetically.
so people know, what exactly is a passive house?
Okay, well, a passive house is what we would call a low or uh, virtually zero energy
Right.
house. I mean, that's what they refer to it. That's the name. I mean, you're looking at a house that's going to have an energy demand of about 15 kilowatt hours per meter squared per year. And so you can
Okay.
then work out. Uh, the house, I've got an old house here that you can see behind me, about 200 years old in parts. Now this has an energy demand of 200 kilowatt hours.
So
So
that's nearly
it's
charge.
90% more than what the other house is. Um, the it varies a bit the way they work. The new CTE, Código Técnico de Edificación, the Spanish building regs is about 24 kilowatt hours. So it's a brand new house. Per meter square per year. So even so, I mean, it's highly energy efficient. It's got, you know, they say, well, there's about 5 requirements. You know,
Mm.
well, I talked about the energy use. Good, well insulated, good performance window, no thermal breaks or bridges, as we call them, we look to have mechanical double flow mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. So those are all the benefits. Here in Spain, in Andalusia, we look at shading as well, because you can have very, very quickly, go over the 25 degrees, and you're looking at temperatures of 20 degrees internally. Comfort rating is that the walls won't vary in temperature 4 degrees, because if you're at 20 degrees ambient air temperature and the nearby pane of glass or the wall is 4 degrees lower, you'll start to realize through radiant heat that's cold. You're going to start to feel the cold.
Yeah. Because it's interesting for myself, a Northern European, is I always thought insulation was for the cold.
Well, I mean, insulation, of course, it's you talk about temperature or thermal transmittance, which is obviously heat going out of the building to a cold environment or coming back in to. Now, I mean, people in Spain didn't take thermal insulation seriously, but I didn't start wearing thermal underwear until I came to Spain. What my wife calls my Walter Brennan's, because this is an old house, and I told you about, it is very, very cold. You need to sort of keep the temperature up. I mean, for example, I've been here 20 years, and I've seen 3 changes in the thermal performance requirements of the building regulations.
Right.
And they're only now starting to take it seriously. You'll know, of course, about the energy certificate that buildings.
Yeah, the EPC, is it called?
Yeah, I mean, when you're buying a property, they'll just look at the area, they'll look at the age of the house, and they'll say, well, the energy use of this building is why, but it's not really, it'll be a 1-page document.
Yeah.
I've just done something for somebody, and that's a 7-page document.
Right.
Plus the improvements, looking at, external insulation, improving the windows, improving the energy rating. And then we were talking about whether they would apply for an energy improvement grant on the property. So, that's just starting off with that. And, that's a lot longer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because, I suppose to go into all these grants is longer than, feel free to come back on. It's absolutely no problem, Liam, but that's probably a separate podcast, applying for energy improvement grant. But I'm thinking, you said passive house, I was thinking of a house with like solar panels on the roof and, the solar water heaters, the electric solar panels. I was thinking of like a house like that.
Well, those can feature, but they're not part of the 5 minimum requirements.
Really? That's a surprise.
Well, you're looking at reducing the amount of energy, so you'll be looking at solar panels. But passive house is something that happens throughout the world. So if you're going, including going up to Finland. So if you're going up to Finland, maybe solar energy is not it's not feasible. So it's not put in as a requirement. But here in Spain, they'd be looking for you. Just under the normal regulations, on a new house, they'd be looking for you to try and provide about 25% of your energy use.
It makes sense in Andalusia, doesn't it? With the south-facing roof in Andalusia. Come on,
No, so certainly the old was the solar hot water heating. I think and certainly if you don't live here the whole time, maybe photovoltaic are more usable, and using that in conjunction with what's called a bomba de calor, a heat pump, or aerothermia, or geothermia as well, if you're using the underground, but using a sort of heat pump to use excuse me, use the energy as efficiently as possible to get the most amount of heating for water, or for your hot water system. If you're using aerothermia, I would go for an underfloor heating because you're not looking at raising the temperature so much as you would be with radiators.
It looks like you're a fan of log burners.
Yeah, I've got one here. I mean, log burners can be very good as well. This house just leaks heat. And I
You
was
would know.
thinking, I was thinking of actually insulating it, but then we're building a new house, a passive house, incidentally, in the nearby town.
Oh, right.
Which,
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
I'm building a new house, so maybe I've got some photos of that, so no, I'm not going to show them to you now, but
Yeah. Well. I mean, that's another one. Just feel free to come back on. We can talk about the new passive house for the whole
yeah.
episode. Well, anyway, Liam. Well, thanks for coming on. And will you send me all your details so I can put them in the notes that go with the
Yes,
podcast?
I'll get those off to you now. I think I've got your, yes, I must have
Yeah,
your
you've
email.
got. I'm sure you got my email. But yeah, so if anyone is looking to buy a property, even if you don't need a mortgage, or if you're looking to build a property, take advice. Because it's worth its weight in gold, the survey. And like I say, if you do need to do major structural work or you need to build a house, and you do actually need an architect.
Yes, absolutely. No, you do. Yes, you'll need an architect. Because I saw somebody was asking, do I need a license to add a floor on to my house? And I said, well, yeah. You will. I don't know if it's permitted in that area without checking it, but you will certainly need a building license, and you will need what we would term planning permission.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Liam. Much appreciated, and thanks for taking the time.
Well, thank you for asking me, John, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, okay. Bye, bye, bye,
Okay,
bye,
bye,
bye.
bye, bye.